further ado, take it away, Patty.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay, Holly? Yeah. Okay, thank you, everyone, for joining this evening and for the last 5 or 6 weeks together. It's been an honor to work with this group of mentors. It's been fun, and I've learned a lot, and I'm pleased. I'm grateful to have been asked to do this presentation tonight. I don't consider myself any kind of an expert in any field, really, but I've prepared some slides that are quite simple, and I think that this is an area that probably everybody on the call has experience with as a participant and a consumer of health services, all of us, and as members of health teams. I think the topic of patient and community-centered decision-making is something we often think about, hopefully always think about, and I'm sure that we'll have a good discussion at the end. So, yeah, I think we can change the slide. So I'm a member of the board of directors of the Northern Ontario Home and Community Care Network, which is a volunteer position. And as an interprofessional hub member for this series, I do receive an honorarium for my participation. So this is this is myself and my partner. We both came down with COVID just a couple of weeks ago, and we're very sick. And so I'm still recuperating, and I haven't actually spoken very much for several weeks. So we'll see how it goes. And the picture at the bottom is our two little guys when they were little. They're 28 and 27 now, but I put that picture in because I was originally supposed to be presenting on November 1st, which was the day after Halloween. And that's a picture of the boys looking into the pumpkin that I thought was a cute picture. So I arrived in Sioux Lookout in '88 as a brand new nurse, and pretty quickly got into home care nursing. I had really taken to home care nursing in my practicum in nursing school. I was raised on a farm, and I remember when we did the home care rotation, driving up these long farming lanes with the other nurse that was my mentor, and being welcomed into farming kitchens and living rooms, and getting to know people where they live, and getting to know more than just superficially. You get to know more about themselves and their family and their milieu and some of the things that they care about. And I took to home care nursing immediately. So when I came to Sioux Lookout, I worked in the hospital, the old zone hospital, for probably less than a year. And then I started doing home care nursing and, did both and did some northern nursing, but always came back to home care. And then in 2004, I was approached by Windigo to be one of the first nurses when they rolled out the new program, the home and community care program, across the Windigo communities. And I started working in Satchko Lake. So I've been working in northern home care ever since. And this was about 2015 that I became the manager of the home care program at Windigo, for better or for worse. Next slide, please. So tonight, the discussion topic is that by the end of the session, the participants will be able to discuss how patient and community-centered decision-making can support Indigenous people to make informed decisions about their healthcare and management of chronic disease. And this presentation should also explain something of how advanced care planning and goals of care conversations can support decisions around whether to stay or leave the community for medical interventions. So I haven't read these since I first put this very small slide presentation together. So I don't know that we'll achieve all of that, but we'll delve into that. This picture here is here because I didn't have any internet. And so I thought, I was trying to find a picture that I might have that shows like sort of a hub and spokes. So if you imagine that the patient is at the center of that clover, and then around the client is built the members of the family and the care team. That's what that picture is supposed to represent. So seems to me I was going to say something else here. I think that we all have an idea of what it means, what it means to talk about client-centered care. Hopefully, everyone on this, all of the participants on this session have experienced themselves client-centered care when they've gone to see a caregiver. And I think that I certainly have recently. I'm really pleased with the family doctor that I have now. And I thought about her when I was putting this together, because it occurs to me that she delivers very, very client-centered care. And I feel respected when I see this doctor and when we discuss my health. I feel very listened to. My care is, another sort of symptom of client-centered care is that the individual might feel like the care is very individualized. It's about them and just about them. You're not like a number, but you're a unique individual. Client-centered care considers not just maybe that small part of the body that the person has come to see you about, but includes holistic perspective. So what the client brings to their health journey, physically, emotionally, mentally, family, community, hopes and dreams. And client-centered care, because it is all of these other things, tends to be a lot more engaging of the client. And we know that when people are engaged in their healthcare, that their interventions tend to be a lot more effective. So there's a lot of literature on client-centered care. I just wanted us all to think about times when we felt that we either delivered very good client-centered care or received it, and what that felt like when we received it. Next slide, please. So I think that really my attraction to home care nursing was really because of this tendency to be able to get the person where they live. So that expression, I want to get you where you live. I've started thinking about that, how that expression kind of means not just knowing a person superficially, but really understanding where they come from, what they believe in, where they're standing, and what surrounds them, and what gives meaning to their life. And so I found from the very beginning that home care was a very meaningful role. Home care is a very meaningful career. And it always felt like a real privilege to be able to enter a home, to be invited into a home, cross that threshold into the client's domain. And it's a different power relationship, I think. The only other sort of nursing, which was hospital nursing, that I had experienced, I felt like the image is kind of like standing over the body of the person who's broken in some way in the bed, and you're kind of doing things to them. As opposed to home care feels like more like standing beside the client, standing behind the client, and advocating and trying to understand and kind of walking in the same direction. And you know, I really was attracted to that role. This is the logo of the Home and Community Care Program in Finnick nationally. And I love this logo very much. One day I'm going to beat it. I have everything that's necessary. I just have to get going. The colors, the hands, the drum motif, I think is a beautiful logo, and I love to show it anytime. So in home care, you know, in home care, we go from home to home and we visit clients, and I work with home care nurses and also principally with personal support workers who are community members. And those personal support workers, as we know, are trained as personal support workers. They may or may not be trained as personal support workers. Increasingly, they are, thankfully. But they are members of the community, and they tend to have a wealth of information about clients from their personal perspective, sometimes as family members, sometimes as neighbors, community members. And they are a huge resource in the work that we do. The PSWs that I work with are extremely conscientious and caring people, and have taught me an awful lot over the years, and have been willing to guide me and help me to understand their people, their culture, communities, and ways. And I've learned an awful lot. I'm not Indigenous myself, and I have not lived in northern remote communities. I've spent quite a bit of time flying in and out and spending days, weeks at a time in a community, and over many years. But I am not going to speak for the Indigenous people I work with, but I've really been enriched by having the opportunity to spend so much time in the North and working with clients and working with the PSWs. So it's important to look to the PSWs in the community. People like Maxine she's the coordinator of her program in Naudkangaming. And I think that the PSWs in communities are often really overlooked, and they are a real wealth of information. Often quiet people who don't sort of assert their knowledge. But I think when one is serving Northern community members, looking to the home care program and to the PSWs to understand situations for clients has really helped me a lot. The next slide, please. So client-centered care when it comes to Indigenous people, I think that we really need to always be humble and remember that it hasn't always gone well. That's a huge understatement. But because of a lot of things in the history and the politics and our shared experience, there's been broken trust. So the healthcare that's been provided in communities is not always has not always been an approach that people can have a lot of faith in and feel that they have community-centered or client-centered approach. And so a lot of times people have not really understood what's going on with them. They don't really understand what the diagnosis is and what the treatment possibilities are. There's a lot of good reasons for this. that I'm not going to go into now. I mean, not good reasons in terms of value, but I mean, there's a lot of variables and a lot of reasons why the trust has been broken and a lot of ways that it's been experienced. Many elders have said, not necessarily to me, but to the PSWs, or the PSWs have understood that the elder doesn't want to go to the nursing station because they're afraid that they may be sent out for something and that they'll never come back again. And they've seen that happen again and again in their communities, where older people are sent out for one thing and they just never end up coming home. There has been a real sense of powerlessness in the relationship over the years. And I hope that we're entering a new age of building much more trust, and client-centered care is a big part of that. A lot of home care is advocating for clients. Like, I find that in our work, a lot of time and attention is spent working with the client to understand what the situation is, why they might have said what they said to the nurse, why they're not willing to come in, or why they're not taking their meds. There's always a reason. And a lot of times the work that we do is advocating for the client with other healthcare providers, so that they will understand where the client's coming from and what the situation is. It's a lot of explaining. And case management is using whatever resources are available to enhance the client's health journey. So it's a lot of reaching out to other players in health to try to support the client as they navigate through to finding some resources and support for themselves with health service providers. It's important for all of us when it comes to our health to feel like we're in the driver's seat. And unfortunately, that really hasn't been the case for Indigenous people, as I've heard over the years. So once again, it's our role to make sure that that changes. One of the really helpful tools we have is to participate in family meetings. And these can happen anytime any caregiver feels like there's more that needs to be said, or there's more people that need to hear the situation, or certain family members maybe are feeling left out, or certain family members are taking on a lot of extra care, a lot of the care that could be better shared. And my experience is that when I first started doing family meetings, I felt very self-conscious and what would you say, intimidated by convening family meetings. But I've found that they've just been so useful to let people speak and to let people hear directly from the care providers what the situation is for their loved one, what the options are, and hearing input from various people in the family and also from other caregivers. I think that it's a really important, and I'll use the word sacred service that we do for individuals and families when we make space and hold space for them to speak. And I think especially because Indigenous people, certainly in our northern area here, are more used to, there's more of a tradition of community involvement in care decisions and family involvement. It really allowing people to participate in decision making really helps to take a lot of the stress away from the super involved individuals that are feeling a lot of stress oftentimes when we're having to make decisions around, long-term care or goals of care. And so I really welcome family meetings and learn always so much from the humility of people to share and to care for each other and to voice that. So I really recommend family meetings whenever, and I also find it'll be interesting to hear from all of you, but I also find that in general, people are very quick to participate, like eager to participate in family meetings. And sometimes you learn about family members that you didn't know. Somebody lives in Winnipeg or Thunder Bay or Sulikout that you didn't know about, and they have a chance to join the meeting. Another tool that's really important and can be sometimes underused, I think, are the translators or the interpreters that are available, or patient navigators in hospitals. And I know, I'll say that I've been guilty of this myself, where I've assumed that because a client seems to understand English fairly well and can speak, that I can just go ahead and speak to them in English. And I've seen over the years where, sure, you can do that, but it's much better client-centered care if you can find someone who speaks the first language. Someone from the community, someone from the family is ideal, or an interpreter or translator who works at the hospital, and someone who speaks Ojibwe or Ojibwe in our case, in the north here, to really help to understand the complexity of the situation, because I think a lot of things can be missed. And we assume a lot when we assume someone can understand something as important as information about their health when it comes to them in a language that's their second language or third language. So I encourage people to use translation, even with people who seem to understand English. Next slide, please.
You have 5 minutes, Patty.
Oh, okay. Okay, so community-centered decision-making, I'll tell a quick story. When I first began working as a nurse in Sachico Lake, I think it must have been maybe the very first summer I went up for Mamishkawan, which is a large gathering of everybody in the community. Everybody goes up to the ridge and camps. And one of our clients was quite ill. And I was just getting to know the community and getting to know the clients. And I was up at Mamishkawan, and I heard over the loudspeaker, I heard them speaking in Ojibwe. And so I don't understand the language. I didn't understand the language, but I could hear my client's name and Thunder Bay Regional and some other things. And I turned to Sarah, the PSW, and I said, what are they talking about? Are they talking about, that client? She said, yeah, they're explaining what's going on. She's in ICU and they're explaining how she is and what's happening in her treatment and all. And I was, as someone who's educated, in the Western way, I was very focused on privacy and personal privacy and confidentiality. And so it was a real eye-opener to be up in the camp and the tents and the people everywhere and the loudspeaker telling us pretty graphic details about the client. And so that really, what would you say? It gave me a good introduction into the other-eyed seeing of the two-eyed seeing approach. So again, just to sort of this is because people live remotely and they live in community, and they really depend on their community. And so people do things in community, and it's the normal traditional way of doing things, and caring about people includes knowing about them. So it's a tough line to walk sometimes, because in the Western approach, we have developed a a security around privacy and personal records for good reason, because it's been exploited and used against people, and people have been traumatized, and it's important it's very important to protect privacy. And so the point of all of this is to make sure that you don't make assumptions, that you check always with the client and how much of their information they would like you to share with other family members, and how much they sort of lean towards group decision making, or some people do really just want their family to make decisions for them. Other people are quite clear about what they want and what they don't want. So it's a balance that we try to strike. Okay, next slide, please. Oh boy, advanced care planning. So I haven't even done anything about this yet. I think when you're approaching the work of doing advanced care planning with elders that have chronic diseases in community, it's really important to explain to the leadership what you're undertaking, and to have the supportive leadership that you're going to be talking to people about goals of care and end of life. And so you can always ask for guidance from the leadership, and from the PSWs and from the people in community about how to conduct these interviews. Doing group presentations will help to prepare for the conversation. And I think that advanced care planning and goals of care conversations should be part of the yearly reassessment for home and community care anyway. Mm-hmm. And substitute decision makers can be identified on the care plan, and they should be included in the yearly goals of care discussions. There are lots of resources available for you to have these conversations. Next slide, please. So I was hoping to have a bit of time because I know that you are all experts in client and community-centered care planning and advanced care planning. I wondered if we could share a little bit about how this looks in your workplace. So I'm not sure if we have time for that, Holly, or...
Actually, we don't, Patty, but I put the question in the chat, and maybe if people can add to the chat, what does client and community-centered care and advanced care planning look like in your workplace? And then if we have extra time at the end, we'll circle back around to kind of thinking about what this looks like.
Okay.
So with that being said, I'd like to say miigwech, Patty. I really appreciate your points around, is it client-centered, and what does client-centered actually mean? I think we all have an idea of what client-centered means, but from an Indigenous perspective, client-centered could really mean family-centered, or it could really mean community-centered. And it's not about making assumptions, but it's always checking and going back, to the patient dignity question. What do I need to know about you and your culture to give you the best care possible? So